The cantina fell silent when the transmission crackled through the speakers. Even the Velthari assassins stopped their deadly card game, their 6 eyes wide with something that might have been fear. The holographic newscast flickered with the image of a battlefield strewn with the metallic corpses of the Dominion's finest warriors. Reports confirm that a single human soldier has eliminated an entire Kethmoran strike force on Zarian Prime. The lone survivor, a Dominion scout, claims. The human moved like death-given form and fought with weapons that defied all tactical understanding. Commander Rithak of the Galactic Commerce Guild crushed his crystalline beverage glass in his 4-fingered grip. The purple liquid dripped between his scales as he stared at the carnage on screen. He had seen the aftermath of human conflicts before the twisted wreckage of the siege of Andromeda Station, the crater where New Vegan had once stood. But this was different. This was personal. The human in question was Corporal Kane Voss, and 3 cycles ago, he had been nothing more than a footnote in the Guild's intelligence reports, a grunt from the Terran Defense Corps, assigned to a backwater mining colony that the Dominion had marked for resource redistribution. Standard procedure called for overwhelming force 1,000 elite Kethmoran warriors against a few hundred human miners and their skeleton crew of defenders. The mathematics should have been simple. The Kethmoran were bred for war, their carapaces capable of deflecting plasma fire, their razor-sharp appendages able to tear through battle armor like parchment. They had conquered 17 star systems in half as many cycles. Their reputation? Built on the bones of lesser species. But the humans had introduced a variable that no military strategist in the galaxy had properly calculated. Desperation, married to ingenuity. RY. Single quotes. AK pulled up the tactical analysis on his neural interface. The battle had lasted 14 hours. For the first 6, it had proceeded according to Dominion projections. The human defensive positions were overrun, their vehicles destroyed, their communications severed. The miners had been herded into the processing facilities, awaiting transport to the labor worlds. Then, something had changed. The surviving data feeds showed Corporal Voss emerging from the collapsed mining shaft where his squad had made their last stand. He was alone, covered in the blue ichor of Kethmoran blood, carrying weapons that the Guild's AI couldn't identify. What followed defied every principle of modern warfare. The human didn't retreat. He didn't call for reinforcement. He didn't even attempt to establish a defensive perimeter. Instead, he began to hunt. The Kethmoran had numbers, superior firepower, and centuries of tactical doctrine. Voss had something else entirely in mind that refused to acknowledge the concept of impossible odds. He turned the mining equipment into weapons, the tunnels into death traps, the very air into a weapon, using chemical compounds that shouldn't have been stable. By the time the Guild's rescue ships arrived, they found a single human standing among the wreckage, calmly tending to wounded civilians. The Kethmoran force had been eliminated to the last warrior, their bodies arranged in patterns that served no tactical purpose but conveyed a message that transcended language barriers. This was what happened when humanity was threatened. The transmission ended, leaving the cantina in stunned silence. Rithak noticed that several patrons had quietly departed, no doubt to update their species' threat assessments. The humans had been classified as a minor military power, notable mainly for their stubbornness and their curious tendency to form emotional bonds with other species. That classification, Rithak realized, would need to be revised, dramatically. 3 standard weeks after the Zarian Prime incident, the Galactic Defense Council convened in emergency session. The circular chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered to discuss what many were calling the human problem. Ambassador Quelther of the Dominion stood at the central podium, her usually immaculate appearance marred by stress fractures along her chitinous exoskeleton. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones of barely controlled fury, We face an unprecedented situation. A single human soldier has destabilized our entire military doctrine. The assembled delegates murmured agreement. In the weeks following Zarian Prime, 3 more incidents had occurred. Each time, human forces had been vastly outnumbered. Each time, they had emerged victorious through methods that defied conventional military wisdom. On Theta Centauri, a human medic named Dr. Ilara Morvain had defended a field hospital using improvised weapons and medical supplies, turning healing compounds into chemical weapons and surgical instruments into precision projectiles. On Kepler 4b, a human engineer called Dex Corin had held off an entire armored division using nothing but mining equipment, and what the after-action report described as weaponized geology. But it was the most recent incident that had truly shaken the galactic community. The assault on Terra Station had been planned for months. The hegemony's finest tactical minds had analyzed every possible variable, accounting for human unpredictability by applying a safety margin of 3,000%. They had brought siege weapons capable of cracking planets, psi-warriors who could dominate minds across star systems, and enough firepower to sterilize a continent. They had not accounted for Captain Nix. Ravencrest, the human commander, had been outnumbered 10,000 to 1. Her forces consisted of a single damaged frigate, a handful of marines, and a crew of civilians who had never seen combat. The hegemony fleet had surrounded Terra Station, demanding surrender and offering the traditional terms of conquest slavery for the useful death for the rest. Captain Ravencrest had responded by ramming her frigate directly into the hegemony flagship. What followed could only be described as controlled chaos. The human crew had somehow turned their dying ship into a weapon platform, broadcasting encrypted signals that turned the hegemony's own automated systems against them. The station's defensive grid, previously considered obsolete, had been transformed into a network of precision death that picked off enemy vessels with surgical accuracy. The battle had lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, the hegemony fleet was debris, and Terra Station remained intact, its human defenders already beginning repairs as if nothing unusual had occurred. The question before us, Ambassador Quelter continued, is not whether humans pose a threat. That has been clearly established. The question is what we do about it. The Velthari representative, a creature of shadow and whisper known as the Umbral, materialized at the speaker's podium. The logical solution is obvious, it said, its voice like wind through dead leaves. We eliminate the threat before it can spread. A chorus of agreement rose from the more aggressive species. The Dominion nodded their approval, while the hegemony survivors broadcast support through their neural links. But one voice cut through the cacophony, a sound like grinding stone that belonged to Gravik Ironheart, the Dwarven Collective's senior military advisor. You speak of elimination as if it were simple, he rumbled. But consider this. Every time we have engaged humans in direct combat, we have underestimated them. Every time, they have proven more dangerous than our projections suggested. He stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. What if the solution is not to fight them, but to understand them? What if the very thing that makes them dangerous could make them valuable? The suggestion was met with stunned silence. Alliance with humans. The concept was almost unthinkable, but as the delegates filed out of the chamber, each carrying reports that would reshape their species' military doctrines. One truth had become crystal clear. Humanity had announced its presence on the galactic stage, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the shadows of the departing crowd, a figure watched and listened. Agent Zara Nightfall of Terran Intelligence smiled grimly as she transmitted her report back to Earth. The galaxy was finally taking notice of humanity. The question was whether that was a good thing or a very, very bad thing. The neural interface crackled with static as Warlord Vexstar reviewed the tactical assessment. His biomechanical implants glowed with frustrated crimson as he processed the data that had arrived from the Galactic Defense Council's classified Intelligence Division. Impossible, he growled, his voice a synthesized rumble that made the command deck of the dreadnought Void Reaper tremble. No single species can adapt this rapidly. His aide, a nervous Skitari named Plex, adjusted his data slate with trembling manipulator arms. Sir, the pattern analysis is conclusive. Human military doctrine doesn't exist in any recognizable form. They appear to improvise tactics in real time, adapting to situations faster than our combat algorithms can process. Vexstar's optical sensors focused on the holographic display, showing the aftermath of the latest human victory. The mining vessel Destiny's Edge had been attacked by a full Ravager, Pac-12 ships, designed to tear apart anything smaller than a battle. The human crew had somehow turned their industrial equipment into weapons, using mining lasers and/or processors to create a defensive grid that had annihilated the attackers. "Show me the crew manifest," Vexstar commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying personnel files. 43 individuals, sir. The ship's captain is one Tobias Grimrock, a former asteroid miner with no military training. His crew consists of engineers, mechanics, and civilian contractors. No soldiers, no weapon specialists, no tactical officers. Vexstar studied the data, his artificial intelligence core working overtime to process the implications. Yet they defeated a Ravager pack that could have challenged a Dominion battle group. How? The humans call it thinking outside the box, sir. They don't appear to be constrained by conventional tactical doctrine. When faced with impossible odds, they ... improvise. The word hung in the air like a curse. Improvisation was antithetical to military science. Successful warfare required planning, coordination, and adherence to proven strategies. The humans seemed to reject these principles entirely, treating each engagement as a unique puzzle to be solved, rather than a problem to be addressed. Through overwhelming force, activate the hunters, Vexstar decided. It's time to test human adaptability against a true predator. The hunters were the galaxy's most feared military units, genetically enhanced warriors drawn from the most aggressive species. Trained from birth to eliminate threats to galactic stability. They had never failed a mission, never retreated from a battle, never encountered an enemy they couldn't defeat. Each hunter was worth 1,000 regular soldiers, equipped with weapons that could level cities and armor that could withstand planetary bombardment. They were the ultimate expression of military evolution, refined through centuries of conflict into perfect killing machines. If humans were truly as dangerous as the reports suggested, the hunters would prove it. And if they weren't, the problem would be solved permanently. The mission briefing was simple. Locate and eliminate Corporal Kane Voss, the human soldier who had triggered the current crisis. Intelligence suggested he was operating somewhere in the Outer Rim, helping human colonists establish defenses against increasing raids. What intelligence didn't mention was that Voss had been expecting them, on the surface of Kepler 186f. The human soldier stood in the ruins of what had once been a thriving mining town. The Dominion's latest raid had left it a smoking crater, but the colonists had been evacuated in time. They were learning, adapting, becoming something more than helpless victims. Voss checked his equipment one final time. The weapons were crude, by Galactic standards projectile firearms that most species had abandoned centuries ago. Explosive devices that relied on chemical reactions rather than exotic energy. But they worked, and more importantly, they were unpredictable. His comm unit crackled with a transmission from the evacuation ships. "Corporal, we're clear of the system. You don't have to do this." "Yeah, I do," Voss replied, his voice calm despite the circumstances. "Someone has to show them that humans don't back down, that we don't surrender, that we don't break." The first hunter materialized from its cloaking field 50 meters away, massive creature that combined the worst traits of a dozen predatory species. Its weapons charged with a sound like tearing metal, and its optical sensors locked onto their target with mechanical precision. Voss smiled grimly, and activated the deadman's switch he'd been carrying since Sarian Prime. The entire mining complex erupted in a carefully orchestrated chain reaction that had been months in the planning. The hunter's shields flared as it rode the shockwave, but Voss was already moving, using the chaos to mask his approach. His first shot took the creature in what might have been a knee joint, sending it sprawling. The second shot, delivered at point-blank range, found the weak point in its armor that no galactic engineer had thought to protect. As the hunter's life signs faded, Voss keyed his come again. "This is Corporal Voss to any Galactic Defense Council forces monitoring this channel. You sent one hunter. I suggest you send more." The message was received simultaneously by 17 different intelligence agencies. Within hours, the hunter corps had been mobilized in its entirety. The galaxy's most feared military unit was about to learn why humans had survived and thrived on one of the most hostile worlds in known space. They were about to learn what it meant to be human. The command bridge of the Eternal Darkness hummed with barely contained energy as Fleet Admiral Corvash studied the tactical display. The massive viewscreen showed the debris field that had once been the Hunter Corps' elite strike force of the galaxy's most feared warriors, reduced to scrap metal and biological matter drifting through the void. "Explain to me," Corvash said, his voice carrying the cold precision of a being who had never known defeat, "how a single human destroyed an entire hunter pack." The intelligence officer, a crystalline being whose species had evolved beyond the need for names, pulsed with nervous bioluminescence. "Sir, analysis of the battle site suggests the human didn't simply fight the hunters. He studied them. Each hunter was killed by a different method, sir. The first fell two conventional explosives, targeted at a structural weak point. The second was eliminated using its own weapons, somehow turned against it. The third was killed by environmental hazards. The human apparently collapsed a cliff face at precisely the right moment." Corvash felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. "Continue. The pattern suggests the human was learning, sir. Each engagement taught him something new about hunter capabilities. By the time he faced the final warrior, he had developed countermeasures for every known hunter tactic. The Fleet Admiral's biomechanical implants processed this information with growing alarm. The hunters weren't just elite warriors, they were living weapons, each one unique, each one designed to counter specific threats. The idea that a single individual could analyze and defeat them in sequence was beyond conventional military science. "Sir," the intelligence officer continued, "there's something else." The human's final transmission. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice that carried no fear, only grim determination. "This is Corporal Kane Voss to any Galactic Defense Council forces. You've sent your best. Now let me show you what happens when you threaten human civilians." The transmission ended, but its implications echoed through the command structure of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. The human wasn't just defending himself, he was actively hunting the hunters. On the surface of Proxima Centauri B, Voss knelt beside the body of the final hunter, studying the creature's biomechanical augmentations. Each one told a story of evolutionary warfare, of species that had turned themselves into weapons to survive in a hostile galaxy. But they had made a crucial error in their design philosophy. They had optimized for known threats, created countermeasures for cataloged weaknesses, built themselves to defeat the enemies they understood. Humans, Voss realized, were the unknown variable that their calculations couldn't account for. He activated his portable fabricator, a device that would have been considered primitive by galactic standards, but was perfectly suited to his needs. Using salvaged materials from the hunter corpses, he began constructing something that no military engineer in the galaxy had ever conceived. The galaxy's species had evolved along predictable lines, some toward brute force, others toward technological superiority, still others toward psychic dominance. But Earth had been different. Earth had been a world of constant change, of endless adaptation, of species that survived, not by perfecting a single strategy, but by learning to change strategies faster than their environment could kill them. Humans weren't the strongest species in the galaxy. They weren't the smartest, or the fastest, or the most technically advanced, but they were the most adaptable, and in a universe where change was the only constant, adaptability was the ultimate weapon. His COMM unit buzzed with an incoming transmission. Corporal Voss. This is Captain Lyra Stormwind of the Terran Defense Corps. We're tracking massive fleet movements toward your position. Multiple species. Full battle groups. They're coming for you. Voss looked up at the stars, where the lights of approaching warships were beginning to become visible. How many? Conservative estimate? 10,000 ships? Maybe more? They're calling it the Grand Alliance. Every major military power in the galaxy, working together for the first time in recorded history. All that for one human soldier. All that because of what one human soldier represents, Stormwind replied. They're not just afraid of you, Corporal. They're afraid of what you've proven is possible. Voss stood, slinging his improvised weapon across his shoulder. The device hummed with power that came from principles no galactic physicist had ever theorized. Then, I guess I better not disappoint them. He walked toward the small settlement that had grown around the mining facility, a handful of prefabricated buildings that housed the families he'd been protecting. Children played in the streets, their laughter carrying across the thin atmosphere. Their parents worked in the fields and factories, building something that might one day become a new world. They were human, which meant they were adaptable, which meant they were dangerous, which meant they were worth fighting for. The greatest military force in Galactic. History was converging on this small colony, intent on erasing the human threat before it could spread. They brought weapons that could shatter planets, warriors who had conquered star systems, and the combined tactical wisdom of 1,000 species. But they were about to learn something that no amount of military science could have prepared them. For that humans fought hardest when they had something to protect, and Corporal Kane Voss had an entire species to protect. The Grand Alliance fleet materialized from hyperspace like a metallic constellation, 10,000 ships arranged in perfect formation around a small human colony. The combined firepower could have reduced a star to plasma, yet they held their position, weapons charged but not yet firing. Admiral Korvash stood before the assembled fleet commanders, representatives of every major military power in the galaxy. The Dominion's warforms bristled with aggressive energy, while the Hegemony's Psi-warriors maintained their telepathic beta-trance. The Velthari assassins phased in and out of visible spectrum, and the mechanical collective's drone minds processed tactical data at superhuman speeds. The human colony below contains approximately 12,000 individuals, Korvash announced. Intelligence suggests they have no military installations, no significant defensive systems, and no spaceworthy vessels. A single bombardment would end this threat permanently. The assembled commanders murmured agreement. The solution was elegant in its simplicity. Eliminate the human expansion before it could spread. Demonstrate to the galaxy that defying the established order carried consequences. But as the fleet moved into bombardment formation, something unexpected happened. The colony's communication array activated, broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously. This is Corporal Kane Voss to the Grand Alliance fleet. I know why you're here. I know what you're planning. And I want to make you an offer. The transmission paused, leaving the command frequencies buzzing with confused chatter. A human soldier, offering terms to the galaxy's greatest military force. The concept was absurd. I'll fight your champions, Voss continued. One at a time, single combat, whatever weapons and conditions you choose. If I lose, the colony surrenders. If I win, you withdraw and leave human space alone. The fleet commanders exchanged glances that transcended species barriers. The human was either insane or supremely confident. Either way, his proposal offered something they hadn't expected: a chance to study human combat capabilities under controlled conditions. "He's buying time," Commander Zethkol of the Dominion observed. "Terran Defense Corps' reinforcements must be en route." "Negative," the collective's tactical analysis unit responded. "Long-range sensors show no approaching human vessels. The nearest TDC fleet is 17 standard days away." Admiral Korvash studied the tactical display, his enhanced mind processing thousands of variables. He's alone. No reinforcements, no support fleet, no hope of rescue. Why would he make such an offer? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the human xenobiologist who had been studying galactic species for the past decade, activated her own CUM system from within the colony. Because he knows something you don't understand about human psychology. He knows that every time you underestimate us, we become more dangerous. The transmission crackled with static as she continued. "You see us as a threat to be eliminated. We see you as a challenge to be overcome. The difference is that we've been overcoming challenges for our entire evolutionary history." Admiral Korvash felt a chill of recognition. He had studied human history, had read the reports of their rise from primitive hunter-gatherers to spacefaring civilization. Every step of their development had been marked by overcoming impossible odds, by adapting to threats that should have driven them to extinction. "Very well," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We accept your terms. Human, choose your first opponent." The reply came without hesitation. "Send your best." The champion of the Velthari materialized on the colony's main street, a creature of living shadow that existed partially in dimensions beyond normal space-time. Its weapons were fear itself, its armor was the darkness between stars, and its purpose was the elimination of threats to galactic stability. It had never been defeated, it had never been wounded, it had never encountered an enemy that could perceive its true form, let alone harm it. Corporal Voss stood at the opposite end of the street, carrying what appeared to be a standard human plasma rifle. The weapon looked crude compared to the champion's exotic armaments, but appearances could be deceiving. "I studied your species," Voss said, his voice carrying clearly in the thin atmosphere. "Read every file, analyzed every tactical report. You exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously, phase shifting between them to avoid damage. Impressive." The champion didn't respond. It simply began its attack, reality warping around it as it moved through space-time like a living nightmare. Voss smiled grimly and activated his weapon. The plasma beam that emerged wasn't standard issue. It had been modified using principles borrowed from 11 different technologies, creating a coherent energy stream that existed in all 7 dimensions simultaneously. The champion of the Velthari had never experienced pain before. It had never known what it meant to be truly hit by an enemy attack. The sensation was so alien that it took precious seconds to process what was happening. Seconds that Voss used to close the distance and deliver a second shot that found the creature's dimensional anchor point. The champion collapsed, its form solidifying as it died. Across the galaxy, Velthari leaders felt the psychic shock of their greatest warrior's demise. "Next," Voss said, checking his equipment. The second champion was a Kethmoran destructor, a biomechanical fusion of living tissue and advanced technology. It had been designed to be the ultimate warrior, combining the adaptability of organic life with the precision of artificial intelligence. Voss killed it in 47 seconds, using a weapon he had constructed from mining equipment and salvaged electronics. The third champion was a hegemony psi-warrior, capable of dominating minds across star systems. It fell to a simple projectile weapon, a crude firearm that fired metal slugs using chemical propulsion. "How?" Admiral Korvash demanded over the CUM. "How is this possible?" "You're asking the wrong question," Voss replied, as he prepared for the fourth opponent. "You want to know how I'm winning? The real question is why you keep losing. The fourth champion was a mechanical collective drone mind, a networked intelligence that could process tactical data faster than any organic brain. Voss defeated it using tactics that the drone couldn't analyze because they defied every principle of military science. The fifth champion was a Dominion warform, bred for combat and enhanced with the finest military technology. It died when Voss used the local environment as a weapon, turning the colony's own infrastructure into a death trap as the sun set over the human colony. Corporal Kane Voss stood alone in the street, surrounded by the bodies of the Galaxies' greatest champions. His equipment was battered, his armor damaged, but he remained upright. Anyone else? He called to the fleet above. The silence that followed was deafening. The Grand Alliance fleet hung motionless in space, 10,000 ships bearing witness to the impossible. Their greatest champions, warriors who had never known defeat. Weapons that had conquered star systems. Technologies that had defined the balance of power for millennia. Lay dead on the surface of an insignificant human colony. Admiral Corvash stared at the tactical display, his biomechanical implants struggling to process what they had recorded. Each combat engagement had been analyzed, dissected, and reviewed by the galaxy's finest military minds. The conclusion was unanimous and terrifying. The human hadn't just won through luck or superior equipment. He had won through adaptation, sir. The crystalline intelligence officer pulsed with nervous bioluminescence. The human is requesting communication. The main screen flickered to life, showing Corporal Kane Voss standing in the colony's central square. Behind him, human civilians went about their daily lives, children playing, adults working, families gathering for the evening meal. They seemed completely unaware that they were at the center of the greatest military standoff in galactic history. Have a proposition, Voss said, his voice carrying the weight of exhaustion, but none of its defeat. You came here to eliminate a threat. I'm offering you a chance to understand it instead. Fleet Commander Zethkal of the Dominion activated his comm system. Explain yourself, human. You see us as dangerous because we're unpredictable, Voss replied. We see you as dangerous because you're predictable. The difference is that we've learned to work with unpredictability. We've made it our greatest strength. He gestured to the colony around him. Look at this place. 3 years ago, it was a barren rock. Now it's home to 12,000 people from 17 different species. Humans, yes, but also Valthari refugees, Dominion outcasts, hegemony dissidents, even a few mechanical collective units that chose independence over conformity. Admiral Corvash felt his certainty wavering. Impossible. Those species cannot coexist. Their biological and cultural differences are too great. That's what everyone said about Earth, Voss responded. We had thousands of different cultures, dozens of different species, countless different ways of thinking about the universe. Yet somehow, we learned to work together. Not because we were similar, but because we were different. On the command deck of the Eternal Darkness, Dr. Yuki Tanaka stepped forward, her voice carrying across the fleet's communication network. What Corporal Voss is describing is called hybrid vigor in evolutionary biology. When different populations interbreed, the offspring often surpass both parents in adaptability and survival capability. The same principle applies to cultures, she continued. When different ways of thinking combine, they create new possibilities that neither could achieve alone. Humans didn't dominate Earth by being the strongest or the smartest. We dominated by being the most cooperative. The fleet commanders exchanged uncertain glances. This was not the conversation they had expected to have. They had come prepared for war, not philosophy. You're proposing alliance, Admiral Corvash said slowly, between the Grand Alliance and humanity. I'm proposing evolution, Voss corrected. The galaxy has been stagnant for centuries. Each species has perfected their particular approach to survival, then stopped growing, You've become specialized to the point of vulnerability. He activated a holographic display showing the colony's diverse population. Look at what we've built here. Valtheri stealth technology, combined with human adaptability. Dominion bioengineering, merged with hegemony sci-sciences. Mechanical collective processing power, guided by organic intuition. The display showed technological marvels that existed nowhere else in the galaxy hybrid. Technologies that combined the best aspects of multiple species achievements, weapons that adapted to their targets, ships that learned from their missions, cities that grew and changed based on their inhabitants' needs. This is what you're afraid of, Voss said. Not human military might, but human potential. The potential to change, to grow, to become something more than the sum of our parts. The silence that followed was broken by an unexpected voice. Gravik Ironheart of the Dwarven Collective activated his cum system, his gravelly voice carrying across the fleet. The human speaks truth. My people have allied with humanity for 3 cycles now. Our technology has advanced more in that time than in the previous century. Other voices joined in. Captain Lyra Stormwind of the Terran Defense Corps, reporting successful joint operations with former enemies. Commander Nyx Ravencrest, describing the hybrid crew that had saved Terra Station. Engineer Dex Corrin, explaining how alien techniques had revolutionized human construction methods. The choice is yours, Voss said, addressing the assembled fleet. You can try to preserve the status quo by eliminating us. But that will only prove that you're too afraid to evolve. Or you can join us in building something better. Admiral Corvash felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This moment would define the future of galactic civilization. The old ways, based on separation and competition, or something new, based on cooperation and growth. And if we refuse, he asked. Voss smiled, and for the first time, there was no grimness in it. Then you'll spend the rest of your existence wondering what you could have become. The transmission ended, leaving the Grand Alliance fleet to contemplate its decision. In the hours that followed, individual ships began to break formation, not to attack, but to establish communication with the colony below. The Valthari Shadow Weavers wanted to learn about human stealth techniques. The Dominion bioengineers requested information about human genetic adaptability. The Hegemony Psi Warriors sought to understand human mental resilience. One by one, the greatest military force in galactic history transformed into something unprecedented. A diplomatic mission. When the final reports were filed, historians would mark this as the moment when the galaxy entered a new age. The age of cooperation, the age of hybrid vigor, the age of human influence. But for Corporal Kane Voss, standing in the colony square as alien ships landed to begin the first true interspecies collaboration in galactic history, it was simply the moment when humanity proved that the most dangerous weapon in the universe wasn't fear or force, it was hope. The human soldier who had terrified the galaxy had done so, not through violence, but through the promise of what life could become when different species chose to grow together rather than apart. In showing the galaxy what humans could do when threatened, he had shown them what they could all become when united. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.